I'm now a 28-year-old woman with a twin brother, and man, our childhoods couldn't have been more different. For some unknown reason, our parents were convinced that my brother was the next big thing while I was just the black sheep because I was more into sports and making friends than hitting the books. They were always comparing us, which was a real confidence crusher for me from a young age. On our birthdays, my brother would have these epic parties with his friends, and meanwhile, my special day felt like an afterthought. He had sleepovers all the time, but I wasn't even allowed to have my friends over. I have to say, I pretty much hated every moment of growing up. The only person in the family who seemed to care was my grandma. Bless her heart, she'd bring me my favorite chocolates when she visited, and sometimes slipped me a few bucks so I could treat myself later. As the years went by, the favoritism for my brother shifted into full-blown emotional bullying directed at me. My parents would make fun of my grades and trash my hobbies. No matter how hard I tried, I could never seem to meet their definition of being the perfect child. Even though I was good at sports, they wouldn't let me join any extracurriculars because they wanted me to focus on studies, just like my brother. It was so frustrating and left me feeling completely powerless. By the time I was in my sophomore year, I got in trouble yet again, this time for having Snapchat on my phone. Seriously, I hadn't done anything wrong. Just downloaded the app to stay in touch with my friends like any other teen. But my parents lost their minds, saying it was a massive breach of trust since I wasn't even supposed to be talking to my friends. They went nuts, throwing my stuff around and took the doors off their hinges, declaring I'd have no privacy as long as I lived there. My brother, instead of having my back, made things worse. He thrived in the chaos my parents' unfair punishments created, lying about me to make himself look better. He'd steal something, blame it on me, and of course my parents believed him because they were already convinced I was the problem. He'd embarrass me in front of my friends at school and make jokes about how I looked. Despite all this, I had a big group of friends because I'm friendly and open. My brother, on the other hand, struggled socially, and I guess he resented me for that. During our 14th birthday, none of his friends showed up, but mine took me out for ice cream, and I had an awesome day. This made my brother even angrier. As revenge, he started spreading outrageous rumors about me at school, painting me as some kind of spoiled brat. He even falsely accused me of physically abusing him at home. It was crazy. He'd punch himself, give himself a black eye or a bruised shoulder, and then walk into school the next day showing off his battle scars as proof of my supposed violence against him. Our parents didn't question his injuries much, thinking they were from playing football or something, but his lies began to take off, gaining traction at school. Whispers started circulating, and even my friends looked at me funny. Suddenly, people who always chatted with me in the hallways pulled away and invites to hangouts dried up. It was like overnight I became the outcast, all because of my brother's lies. I finally asked my former best friend what was up, and she spilled everything. All the lies my brother had been telling. It felt like a sucker punch hearing how deeply he was trying to ruin me. I confronted him, begging him to stop, but he just smirked and said I deserved to be alone. That really shook me. His words were frightening, almost as if his lies were starting to physically hurt. I wanted to talk to my parents, but they always sided with him, so I felt stuck. It was horrible being so isolated, especially since I'd always been such a social person. My brother's jealousy-fueled lies were destroying the friendships I'd built over the years, and even teachers started hearing the rumors. It was surreal, like living in an alternate universe where my real self was being overshadowed by these twisted stories my own brother made up. Things got really serious when the rumors reached our principal, and that's when my worst nightmare came true. The principal called me into the office, and my whole world felt like it was collapsing under these terrible lies. It was like living a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. So there we were, all called into the principal's office, me, my brother, and our parents, to hash out these wild rumors that were flying around. I was sitting there, heart pounding, hoping my brother would finally spill the truth. But nope. He dug his heels in and kept up with his story. He told the principal that, yeah, the rumors were true and painted me as some kind of bully who beat him up when our parents weren't around. I was totally floored. My bro was weaving this crazy tale about how I was supposedly jealous of him for getting more love from our parents. Seriously, it was all lies, but he was sticking to his story like glue. My mom started crying, holding on to my brother like he was some kind of hero. Meanwhile, my dad was comforting my brother, saying it was brave of him to speak up and promising him that nothing would ever happen to him after that day. I was there, trying to defend myself, practically begging the principal to believe me that it was all just made up. I felt like I was drowning in all these accusations, desperately trying to stay afloat. But my brother just kept insisting I was this angry, violent person, taking out my frustrations on him every single day. Mom kept crying and holding on to my brother, giving me these accusing looks. It was like I was fighting against this wall of belief in my brother's made-up story. The principal gave me a stern warning, saying the school didn't tolerate bullying and that I could be suspended. I pleaded with him, tears streaming down my face, trying to tell him I didn't do anything, but he firmly told me that I would be suspended for 10 days to set an example against bullying. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and I started crying even more, practically begging him to reconsider. My parents, angry and embarrassed, dragged me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to make them understand, but they weren't having it. We left the school, and I felt overwhelmed with frustration and humiliation. When we got home, things completely flipped. Out of nowhere, my dad started packing up my stuff. I was confused and had no clue what was going on. My mom asked what he was doing, but he just shouted that I couldn't live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying, practically on my knees, pleading with my brother to tell them the truth, but he just stayed cold and unmoved. Dad kept packing my things and then tossed the suitcase into the foyer. I clung to my dad's legs, begging him not to kick me out. It felt like a nightmare. He told me that a bully like me didn't deserve to live in his house and that he'd get my grandma to pick me up. I felt like the world was crumbling beneath me, standing there in shock, surrounded by my belongings scattered everywhere. Eventually, my grandma showed up, gathered my things, and helped me into the car. She made sure I was buckled in before she walked up to my parents' front door. When Dad opened the door, she laid into him for treating me this way. She was so strong and determined, warning him that if he ever tried to contact me again, she'd get the police or CPS involved since what he did could potentially land him in jail. My mom tried to say it was my fault, but Grandma wasn't having any of it. She stood her ground, defending me, insisting I was just a kid who didn't deserve to be treated like this. It was the first time I really saw how powerful my grandma was. She didn't back down from my parents. Unlike them, she trusted me. Then we drove away, leaving behind my home, the only place I'd ever grown up in. It's hard to describe the pain I felt. I remember just crying on the bed and not eating, even though my grandma urged me to. I told her about what my brother did, and she was shocked too. She assured me she believed my side, and I was grateful to have at least one person on my side. When my 10-day suspension was over, going back to school felt like stepping into a lion's den. Walking down the familiar hallways, the judgmental whispers and side-eye glances were everywhere. The false accusations still hung heavy in the air. Meanwhile, my brother just ignored me, acting like I didn't exist. He'd made some friends who believed his story and saw him as the victim. No matter how much I tried to tell my side, it seemed like no one wanted to hear it. I felt like an outcast, branded with an unfair label that followed me everywhere. In the classroom, the cafeteria, the hallways, everyone's eyes on me were filled with disdain and mistrust. I became a loner, keeping my head down, attending classes, eating lunch alone, and heading straight home after school. I had no friends and felt like nobody wanted me around. My parents never checked in on me, but my grandma kept reminding me that it wasn't my fault and that things would eventually get better. I made it through high school with good grades and looked forward to the future, hoping for better days. Heading off to college was my big escape plan. I was really hoping it would lead to a better life. Once I got there, I truly tasted freedom for the first time. No one was constantly checking up on me, nobody was comparing my grades, and there wasn't any competition looming over my head. It was refreshing. I connected with people who were on the same wavelength and built some solid friendships. Despite carrying around some emotional and physical baggage from my family and peers, I focused on leaving it behind and soaking up the college experience. During this time, I stumbled upon my talent for content writing. I always wanted to be a writer, But I wasn't sure if I could make a full-time gig out of it, so I kind of abandoned that dream. But needing some extra cash, I started freelancing on the side. I signed up on a bunch of freelancing sites and managed to land gigs with some big-name clients, which slowly helped me build up my portfolio during college. I kept this side hustle going strong and never needed to ask my parents for money. After I graduated, instead of jumping into a corporate job, I realized content writing could actually be a full-time career. Thanks to the multiple clients I had and the strong professional relationships I built with them, I was rolling in projects. This freelancing hustle made me financially independent, and I got to live the dream of being a digital nomad, traveling the world while working. Traveling was a kind of therapy for me, helping me heal from past wounds, though it definitely wasn't always easy. I saved up what I could and took a leap of faith on myself. Over the years, I've explored so much of the world, yet there's still so much left to see. The only family member who stuck by me through all this was my grandma, and I absolutely adored her. She was bummed when I moved out, but understood my need for independence. Despite my crazy schedule, I always made time for her. We'd hang out on weekends, sharing meals, diving into conversations about everything from childhood stories to the latest happenings. I'd spend entire afternoons helping her around the house or join her for leisurely walks in the park. Recently, I wrapped up one of the biggest projects of my career. I had the chance to write blogs and product descriptions for a well-known brand. Can't spill the beans on the name, though. After the project, the team I worked with gladly left me glowing reviews on my freelancing profiles. I even took some screenshots and posted them on Instagram because I knew working with this brand was a big deal. As expected, fellow content writers congratulated me on my success and shared my story, helping it spread. Soon, I started getting messages from strangers interested in hiring me for their websites. Even my family got wind of it, and a few relatives reached out to congratulate me. The buzz reached my old college principal, who invited me to give a seminar about building a career in content writing. I was nervous. Public speaking isn't exactly my jam, but I took the plunge. Standing there, seeing all those eager faces felt surreal, like my life had come full circle. I shared my struggles and how I persevered, hoping to inspire others in the writing community. Some clips from the seminar went viral on Facebook, which was pretty cool. Last week, I was invited to speak on a local news show about the perks of content writing. I was nervous but excited for the opportunity. During the show, I talked about my journey and how little gestures like client reviews can open doors. It was amazing to reach a wider audience and inspire even more people in the field. When the show aired, I proudly shared some clips on Instagram. That's when my relatives and cousins really started to notice my career achievements. You see, my parents never really talked about me, so they had no clue I was working with big brands and getting TV invites. But that TV interview must have reached them, because a few days later, while working on another project with my phone on silent, I saw 6 missed calls from my mom. It was surprising, to say the least, given how long it had been since she last called. I hesitated but called her back, and she answered immediately. She was congratulating me, and my dad jumped in too, asking about my life. It all seemed pretty normal until they started probing about how much I was earning. I told them it was none of their business, to which my dad replied that we're family, so I shouldn't be shy about sharing my income. I let him know that. So here's the scoop. I was doing pretty well financially, and my mom caught wind of it. She started talking about how tough things were for them now, and I could feel my suspicions kicking in. Here's how our chat went down. Mom was like, "We're retired and really want to fix up the house. It's falling apart, but our savings are gone." I was like, "Okay, Mom." Then she dropped the bomb. "We saw you on TV, doing so well, and thought maybe you could help us out with the renovations." Dad chimed in, "We're family. You should be sharing some of your success with us. We could really use some help." I was honestly taken aback. I said, "Are you joking? You haven't spoken to me in years, and now you're asking me for money?" I didn't get why they suddenly decided to reach out, but while I appreciated the nice words about my success, I told them no way I was helping. Mom started guilt-tripping me, saying I was being cold and that family sticks together. Dad insisted that as my parents, they deserved my support, like it was my duty. I got so mad I wanted to really lay into them, but then I thought, why not make a point instead? I told them I'd help under one condition. Dad, curious, asked what it was. Without missing a beat, I said they needed to publicly admit my brother was behind the nasty rumors that wrecked my reputation. They'd humiliated me by believing his lies, so now it was time for some payback. If they wanted my help, they had to own up to their mistakes and the pain they caused. They weren't happy. Dad questioned why this was necessary, and Mom said we should talk privately, but I wasn't budging. It was all or nothing. As things got heated, Dad raised his voice about his fatherly role and my responsibilities, while Mom pleaded for me to do the right thing because they raised me. The irony stung, considering they'd kicked me out, and it was Grandma who took care of me. They got more and more worked up, but I stood my ground. If they wanted a relationship or any financial help, they had to face the past and hold my brother accountable. Since that convo, they've been blowing up my phone, but I'm ignoring them. I'm starting to regret even picking up when they first called. Am I really the bad guy for cutting them off? Update. It's been a crazy week since I shared my story, and the support from everyone has been amazing. It's a relief to know I'm not alone, and that most people agree I shouldn't engage or help my parents after everything. I made the condition knowing it was a long shot since they adore my brother and would never throw him under the bus like they did with me. Today, my brother sent a nasty text because I keep dodging their calls. He said, "Hey sis, life's been great without you. Heard Mom and Dad reached out and you gave them a wild ultimatum. You know they'll never do it. They never loved you and won't do anything to hurt me. I lied about you 15 years ago, but that's old news. Stop being selfish and move on. You're not married or with kids, so why not help them out with the house?" That message hit me hard. The nerve to brush off my struggles and throw in my face my unmarried, childless status was just another dig. His attempt to guilt-trip me into putting their needs first was super offensive and just showed how little he thought of me. Fed up and wanting justice, I decided to spill the beans. I wrote an email to my parents and close relatives, laying out all the painful details of my childhood and the unfair treatment I got compared to my twin brother. I described the strict and oppressive environment I grew up in and how the bogus rumors my brother spread hurt me deeply. Sure thing. Let's make it more casual and add a little detail. So, in school, things got pretty rough for me and it messed up my reputation big time. I explained how my parents basically kicked me to the curb, and if my grandma hadn't stepped in, who knows, I might have been homeless, or worse. At the end of my email, I asked everyone to check out a message from my brother where he straight up admits he lied about me. I attached a screenshot of his confession, hoping it would finally clear my name from all those lies. Just sent the email an hour ago, and I feel like things are about to get wild once my parents and brother see it. I'll keep you posted on how they react. Update. It's been a month since I sent that email and wow, a lot has happened. As expected, my family totally blew up. My parents got called out by relatives who had no clue about the favoritism and emotional abuse I've dealt with. Many family members reached out to apologize for not having my back before. Meanwhile, my brother and parents bombarded me with nasty texts that just kept getting worse. So I spoke to a lawyer who sent them a cease and desist letter, basically warning them to back off or face legal trouble. Seems like it scared them enough because they finally stopped bothering me. My grandma thinks I did the right thing by shedding light on everything, and she's completely supportive, which means the world to me. Update 3. It's been 2 months now, and things are finally looking up. My content writing business is doing awesome, and I've even been invited to speak at seminars and podcasts, which is pretty cool. Grandma and I are closer than ever. I took a break from work recently to hang out with her. She's into gardening now, and I learned so much from her about different flowers and herbs. Those moments with her, sharing meals and having deep conversations, are my favorite. Since that lawyer letter, my family hasn't reached out, and honestly, I'm glad they're keeping their distance. On a personal note, I've started therapy to work on healing myself, which feels like a good step forward. I think this will be my last update for now.